I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked through the front door of my father's house. There was a strange heaviness in the air, like the quiet tension right before a storm breaks. The hall lights were dim, the smell of roasted garlic drifting from the kitchen, and laughter echoed faintly from the living room. It was Dad's 65th birthday, a day he had insisted be small, peaceful, just family. That was exactly why I showed up early. After months of distance and misunderstandings, I wanted at least this one evening to feel normal. But nothing about that night would turn out normal. Dad smiled when he saw me, wrinkles deepening around his eyes as he hugged me tighter than usual. "I'm glad you made it, Joey," he said softly, patting my back. There was warmth in his voice, the kind that reminded me of childhood, of safety, of home. But that warmth didn't last long, because Daniel walked in behind him. My older brother flashed me a smile that never reached his eyes. "Joey," he said, almost too cheerfully, "you're early, so are you," I replied cautiously. He shrugged and walked past me, brushing my shoulder. It was subtle, but it was enough to remind me of the old dynamic, Daniel pushing boundaries, and me trying not to make a scene. I ignored it. I was here for Dad, not to pick another pointless fight. Dinner began calmly enough. Everyone took their seats around the table, decorated with mismatched candles and Mom's old lace runner, the one she used only on special occasions. Dad had insisted on using it tonight, saying, "Your mother loved this, she'd want it here." I swallowed hard. Mom's absence still felt like a fresh bruise, even after a year. I reached across the table and squeezed Dad's hand lightly. He smiled, but Daniel kept glancing at me, studying me, waiting. I didn't know why, not yet. Halfway through the meal, Dad tapped his fork against his glass. "I just want to say how grateful I am to have my boys with me tonight. It's been a difficult year." His voice tightened, but he steadied it. "I know things haven't always been easy, but..." Daniel stood abruptly. "Actually, Dad," he said loudly, raising his wine glass, "I have something to announce, something important for the future of the family." My stomach tightened. He looked around the room dramatically, making sure everyone's eyes were on him. Then, with a grin that twisted my nerves, he said, "I will be taking full ownership of the house Joey currently lives in. Effective immediately, he will be moving out by the end of the month." The room fell silent. A fork dropped somewhere near the end of the table. Dad stared at Daniel as though he couldn't comprehend the words. My heart plummeted into my stomach. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, but my voice came out louder than intended. Daniel didn't even look embarrassed. "It's simple. The property is under my management now, legally, and I've decided it's time for some changes. That's my house," I said, pushing back from the table. Mom left it to me. He sipped his wine casually. "Not anymore." Dad's voice cracked. "Daniel, what did you do?" Daniel ignored him. He was watching me, only me, standing there with shock burning through my chest. I saw it then, the smugness, the satisfaction. He wanted this. He wanted to break me in front of everyone. But he didn't see what was coming next, because as I stared back at him, letting my anger settle into something colder, sharper, I made a silent promise. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I barely slept the night after Dad's birthday. My mind replayed Daniel's announcement over and over. The smug smile, the shocked silence, Dad's trembling voice asking him what he'd done. None of it felt real. It was as if someone had grabbed the foundation of my life and shaken it until the walls cracked. By morning, anger had settled into something steadier, not rage, focus. Daniel had said he had legal management over my house, and I knew that was impossible unless something shady had happened behind my back. Mom's will was clear. The house was mine. I had signed nothing, transferred nothing, and discussed nothing with anyone, which meant only one conclusion. Daniel had done something he shouldn't have. I drove home with a knot in my throat and a buzzing anxiety under my skin. The house looked smaller than usual as I pulled into the driveway, almost vulnerable. The thought that Daniel had been plotting behind my back made my stomach twist. Inside, the air was stale, quiet, too still. I went straight to Mom's old desk, the one she kept locked, the one she used for anything important. I rarely opened it after she died, partly because it still smelled faintly like her, and partly because touching her things still hurt. But today, I needed answers more than comfort. The top drawer slid open easier than I expected. Inside were neatly stacked folders labeled in her familiar handwriting. Bank records, medical notes, insurance forms. Everything was organized, untouched. Then I saw it. A thin yellow envelope with my name on it. My pulse quickened as I pulled it out. Inside were copies of the original property documents, Mom's will, her last signed letter to me, and even older papers she kept for record. Each document confirmed the same thing. The house was mine, clear as day. Then I found a second envelope, this one unmarked. Inside were additional copies, but something was horribly wrong. At first glance, they looked like duplicates, but when I held them side by side with the real ones, the differences became obvious. Tiny details, lines too smooth, letters too perfect, the signatures, Mom's name signed in a slightly different curve. Dad's initials in a style he never used. My chest tightened. Someone had forged them, and not even well. I sat back, breath shaking, heat rising to my face as realization poured in. Daniel had done this. He must have. He wouldn't be bold enough to confront me at Dad's birthday unless he believed he had already secured every advantage. But why go this far? Why risk everything just to take something that wasn't his? The answer came in the form of another stack of papers shoved toward the back of the drawer. I pulled it out and scanned the first page. Loan application. My house listed as collateral. Estimated sale value circled. Potential buyers scribbled in the margins. My skin went cold. Daniel wasn't just stealing the house. He had planned to sell it. Quickly, quietly, probably to cover whatever financial mess he'd gotten himself into. The puzzle pieces fell into place so fast it hurt. He waited until Mom was gone. He waited until Dad was grieving. He waited until I was distracted, trying to keep the family together. And then he struck. I felt a wave of grief, betrayal, and fury all at once. It wasn't just the house he wanted. It was control, power, maybe even revenge for old insecurities he never outgrew. But he had underestimated me. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called the one person I knew I could trust with something this big. Liam, Joey, I need your help. It's about my brother and my house. There was a pause, and then a steady reply, I'm listening. And just like that, the quiet beginning of my revenge began. I spent the next few days in a haze of planning and quiet observation. Daniel didn't know I was onto him yet, and I intended to keep it that way. Every time he called Dad or left messages pretending to be conciliatory, I smiled politely, nodded, and let him think he was still in control. Meanwhile, I dug deeper into his deception. With Liam's guidance, we collected every scrap of evidence we could find. The forged signatures, the hidden bank statements, the draft contracts listing potential buyers, and even emails where Daniel bragged about finally securing Joey's property. Every piece strengthened the chain we needed to bring him down. Daniel, of course, continued his charade of superiority. He strutted around the house during visits, commenting on minor repairs I had done, hinting at his control. And how it would all be settled soon. I stayed calm. I let him overplay every move, smile at every smug remark, and underestimate me at every opportunity. The hardest part wasn't the planning, it was keeping my emotions in check. Every time I saw Dad, still shaken from the birthday confrontation, my chest ached. He was torn between his sons, unknowingly caught in the crossfire, and every time I looked at Daniel, I felt the weight of betrayal crushing my ribs. But I learned to breathe through it. Anger could be useful if wielded correctly. It was what fueled me now. Finally, Liam set the date. A week after I confronted the evidence, Daniel had called a family meeting to finalize the property transfer. Perfect. That was exactly the stage I needed. I arrived early, calm and composed, carrying the folders that could ruin my brother. Behind me followed Liam and discreetly a handwriting expert who had confirmed the forgeries. Daniel greeted me with a smug grin. "Joey, glad you could make it. This will be quick, no need for drama." I smiled faintly, taking a deep breath. "Sure, Daniel, let's keep it quick." The meeting began with casual small talk, laughter that seemed forced, and Daniel giving me pointed looks, as if daring me to challenge him. He didn't know I was armed with the truth, and that gave me a quiet satisfaction. When he finally moved to present the paperwork, I let him speak. "So, Joey, these documents are all you need to move out. Everything is in order legally. It's just a matter of signatures and, actually..." I interrupted calmly, sliding the first folder across the table. "These documents are fraudulent." Daniel's confident expression faltered. My voice stayed steady, controlled. "These signatures are forged, Daniel. Your attempts to manipulate Dad into signing over property he didn't authorize have been documented. And these emails, where you plan to sell my house without consent, prove intent to commit fraud." I signaled the handwriting expert, who laid out her reports. She explained in detail, comparing Mom's authentic handwriting with the forged versions Daniel had submitted. Each difference, each anomaly, was undeniable. Liam stood beside me and added, "Attempting to sell this property without the rightful owner's consent is illegal. The house remains under Joey's ownership. Any attempt to force a transfer could have legal consequences for you personally." Daniel's smugness shattered. He tried to protest, flail, and deny, but the evidence was airtight. My father sat speechless, clutching the reports, a mix of grief and shock on his face. The table was quiet, except for Daniel's shallow breathing. I leaned back and said softly, "This isn't personal, Daniel. It's simply the truth. You underestimated me, and now the consequences are clear." Daniel's empire of lies crumbled before our eyes. And for the first time in years, I felt a quiet, satisfying calm. The room felt heavy, almost suffocating, after Daniel's failed attempts to defend himself. He slumped in his chair, staring at the folders as if they might magically erase the evidence. My father sat nearby, shaking, eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. It was a scene I had imagined countless times over the past week, but seeing it unfold in real life carried a weight I hadn't anticipated. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch just long enough to give the moment its full effect. Then I spoke. "Dad, I know this is painful. I know you feel torn, but you've already said it yourself. These documents aren't yours. Mom's will is clear. The house belongs to me, and Daniel's actions were deliberate." Dad's eyes glistened. I didn't understand. I trusted him. I thought he was helping. "You weren't at fault, Dad," I said gently. "Daniel took advantage of your grief. He manipulated you, forged documents, and tried to steal from your family. None of this is your responsibility." The weight in the room shifted as Liam, my lawyer, spoke. "The legal consequences of these actions are significant. Daniel has no claim to the property. Any attempt to sell it or force Joey out would be a violation of the law." Daniel, pale and trembling, finally found his voice. "Joey, I didn't mean, you didn't mean," I repeated, my voice calm but cutting. "You meant to take what wasn't yours. You plotted while Mom was gone, while Dad was vulnerable. You tried to erase me, my rights, and my home. That's what you meant." He tried to argue further, but my father raised a hand. "Enough, Daniel. You betrayed your own family. You're not taking Joey's house. You're leaving this room, and you'll be accountable for your actions." Daniel looked at me, desperation flickering in his eyes. but there was nothing I could give him, not forgiveness, not sympathy. His empire of lies had collapsed, and he realized too late that the consequences were real. He left the room quietly without another word. The front door closed with a finality that echoed in my chest. I felt an unfamiliar lightness. I turned to Dad. "I'm here," I said softly. "I'm not leaving. I'll take care of the house. Mom would have wanted it this way." Dad nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. He hugged me, and I could feel the years of tension between our sons slowly beginning to heal, at least in part. "I'm so proud of you, Joey. You handled this better than I could have imagined." Later, as we sat together in the living room, Dad reminisced about Mom. Their dreams, her laughter, the way she had insisted we all stay close no matter what. And I realized that this house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was memory, love, and family. Daniel had tried to steal that, but he failed. I walked through the house slowly that night, touching the furniture, looking out at the garden, listening to the creak of the wooden floorboards. This was mine, not because I had fought legally, but because I had refused to let betrayal define me. In that quiet, I understood something profound. Revenge doesn't always have to be loud, cruel, or vindictive. Sometimes it's simply restoring balance, letting truth shine where lies once ruled, and walking away stronger than before. And as the night settled over the house, I smiled faintly. Daniel had lost more than a property. He had lost control, respect, and the trust of the family he had thought he could manipulate. I, on the other hand, had won something far more lasting: peace, clarity, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that betrayal could never touch me here again. The house was mine, the family's trust was healing, and for the first time in weeks I felt truly, completely free.